Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 92. Good one, 92. We're digging into 92. Right off the bat, what's up? I don't want to start necessarily with divulging any personal matter, but this approach this week is a different day than I usually do it, which is neither here nor there, partly because of expedience and I helped a friend with the self-tape, and great to help. A cool part to have a little scene today to help him read something maybe that I would seek to be involved with as well, but currently don't have the access, and that's fine. And I mean it this time. And I mean it all, efforts are being made. I have better communication with my agent, and I can't make the casting end see it the way we see it, my agent and I. And it's just another thing. And it felt good to have reconnect with a friend I haven't seen in a million years, and also to work on something, even if it was just like kind of cold reading. And one thing I did notice, the beauty of this whole endeavor, or the full circle moment, or this person is responsible for, a lot of my developing skills over the years as a younger actor. And it literally was slated as like an hour to do not one-liners, two back and forth scenes. And it felt great because of the high level of skill of the two of us. And it dawned on me that we did 2 takes of each, which were, it was about 4 pages. He was cold-blooded on his lines, knew the beats and all that stuff. And we knocked it out. And that's the level I play at and he plays at. And even if it's, just as a reader or whatever, it dawned on me sitting there, even in the pauses, we were able to be light-hearted, do the bit, do the scene, knock it out, get 2 down, even survive a screw up of lines and ride through it. He made some editorial decisions. He threw in a little extra this, that, and this, and we made our adjustments, all of that stuff. And it felt good. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, like this would be a disaster with an unseasoned actor, truthfully. And that is just to be in the realm of auditioning, not even factoring in the realm of working on it and ultimately getting it, which ultimately we would be, I think, in the running for, and hopefully he will be, and somewhere down the line that sun will shine on me. But the notion of denigrating yourself as an actor or as a creative, or for me, someone who doesn't know what the hell is happening sometimes, or grinding yourself to a nub with self-talk and self-doubt and revisionist history, or not being kind to yourself, which, that even, I can't even say that, which is evidence of me not being kind to myself. The idea that I am conditioned to think that is namby-pamby, or conditioned to hear that as gobbledygook, or to refute the notion of self-kindness. And maybe it's the self part that is not as hard to digest as the word kind. And so, anyway, all I can say is that, like, I've worked with many an actor, many a people, and it's a good feeling to be able to lend your skills and play at that level, is all I'll say. And while it might not be center court at Wimbledon, when you can hit with somebody and you're playing with evenly matched people. There is a respect level, and there is just the level you're playing at, and that felt good. And it's sort of a reassessment of recommitment and et cetera, et cetera. So that the reason I bring it up is because I'm jumping right in to the death session at the time I am, because the stuff's already set up, and sort of like a kitchen is virtually integrated, now's the time to do this. Why would I break it down to reset it, to do it at a different time? And it's not my usual time, and maybe, but now's the time. And so it may change the tenor because of comfort zone. It may change the tenor because of nutrition and hydration issues. And I'm wearing the King of Queens backwards hat out of hairstyle necessity at the moment. But also it's, meet the day, knock things off your list, make those accomplishments. You've heard all those insipid commencement speeches as we were at that time of year, make your bed, and, thank God I did hear that stuff from, again, I know military, and I guess I was lucky that sports and the arts were in my life, because the idea of self-discipline, self-sacrifice, sacrificing for a teammate, making the extra pass, these things are analogous, in my opinion, to acting, theater, even screen acting, or any collaborative thing. I think you want to think about the team sport athlete versus the individual sport athlete. Both, and the outcomes are not guaranteed one way or the other, but an individual athlete is going to have all the discipline stuff. They're going to learn their lines, but they may not be collaborative. Whereas a team sports person understands, like the shortstop, second baseman, double play team is analogous to, it sounds crazy, but like a buddy cop film. Like you could see Pee Wee Reese and, whoever, Jackie Robinson, that's every fucking Lethal Weapon scenario in the physical form, in the sporting form, Similarly, we are, and this is how I am getting into my Knicks being 2 games away. If the clip that they're going to show for all of our future histories of the Knicks, hopefully, knock on wood, don't want to jinx it, of this season, there's the play where Bridges hits the 3-pointer after every single 5-member player. I think it's every player. It's the passing and making the extra pass and finding the best shot, and then he connects on the 3. It's beautiful basketball. It's beautiful teamwork. It's beautiful collaboration. So, you're off camera when you're doing a self-tape, when you're just a reader. But I can change pace. I can throw a little gas at him, and it's going to help my friend. And, the problem with a lot of the egotism in the arts, or at least in show business, is that people don't see it that way. They just see it as their turn to shine, and they're more interested in their headshots and their branding. And then, of course, social media, and people are vlogging, and people are podcasting, and so everything is solo, siloed, one phone, one screen. And so things like the collaborative nature of the Knicks playing team basketball, the 5 some being greater than the other team because of the unity, because of the sharing of the ball, passing the ball, kicking out. Those are all like setting up the scene. Guess what? Could one actor beat up another actor off screen? Maybe, okay? Does that mean that if you're cast in reverse to the physical abilities of the actors off screen, does that mean the actor who could beat the other one refuses to, in wrestling, no-sell the fact that the other guy's intimidating? No, right? And so when you hear, and this is all true stuff, when you hear someone say, stay in the moment, go with your impulses, if I think I could take the other actor, my impulse might be fuck up the scene and buck up to the guy who I think I could physically dominate, right? But the story, the given circumstances, tell you this guy's going to pistol whip you, or this guy's going to choke you out, or he's just so scary and menacing that he's going to, make you cower. Now, you'd be anathema to the proceedings to go with an instinct that wouldn't happen. Not to pick on Tom Cruise, but he has to be really good at fighting, and you have to take the leap of faith that he's Jack Reacher versus the guy who's doing Jack Reacher. Is it Jack Reacher? It's just Reacher. It's not Jack. It's Jack Ryan. I don't know what the fuck it is. It's Reacher. You have to suspend disbelief that Tom Cruise can whoop 8 guys' asses, although he's probably pretty physically fit and pretty charged up, and you'd probably have a hard time handling that guy. So, but you understand what I'm saying. You have to play the given circumstances, which is where, back to the defense, you have to play what the defense is giving you. So you may want to shoot the jumper because your jumper's nice, but if it's the wrong shot, you're forcing the shot. That's what they say. And that's currently not what the Knicks are doing. And then every once in a while, your leading actor or your very special talented actor will take a contested tough shot. And would be Brunson. Those shots shouldn't fall, and they do, right? And that's why we love him. And that's why sports and the arts are analogous, but of course, because of given circumstances and because of scripted behavior, we have to find ways to do, quote unquote, what the script requires and yet still surprise, which is why some people, and which is why, I panic, because you can see the reactions on the streets in New York about how excited we are about the Knicks because of how long it's been. It's been so long that most people haven't been, a lot of younger people haven't been alive to know. I go way back to Truck Robinson, Otis Birdsong, Bernard King, the great Bernard King. If he didn't hurt himself, he might be in the argument for best small forward, all the way through all the Starberry and, and the Ewing years. I was in New York for the 99. 94 and 99, the OJ game interrupted, Mason, Oakley, Van Gundy, that JoJo English bullshit where they fucking ejected Harper for the next game and shit. So, and barring, quote unquote, any of that fucking BS, we're doing our thing, and the one good thing about social media is I feel connected to New York, even though I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm taking the ride, with the city. Would I want to be there? Probably. If I were a different financial situation, would I maybe fly there just to be in the vicinity? Maybe. In my hometown, the movie theater is selling, is letting people in to watch on the big screen. There's people projecting the games on the side of buildings. It's fantastic, and they are a likable squad. It reminds me of the 96 and on Yankees, that even non-Yankee fans hated the Yankees. They hate the pinstripes. They hate the logo, but they just couldn't hate the personnel, And I think that's kind of what's happened with the Knicks, except for maybe their arch rivals, whatever. And it does, bring back memories, and also just, if I had any propensity in sports, it was, before my injuries, I was a hooper, and I miss that. That is one of the laments that the body can't do anymore, is that just playing fearlessly. It's not football, it's not that, but it is a contact sport, and there is some bravery in taking the ball to the rack, taking a charge, D'ing somebody up, banging for a rebound. A lot can happen. You have to improvise. I think I don't want to get political, and I don't want to pit blue and red or any of that, but basketball, I guess, similar to soccer, or a lot of people don't vibe on these sports in certain stratas, let's say, maybe, or the dominance of football has a lot to do with gambling and a lot to do with territorialism and regionalism and great branding, and it is a great game, but it's harder to improvise in football. And in basketball, the coach, you see how coaches react. They do in football too, but coaches react like they're letting the play unfold. There are philosophies, there are adjustments, there are spacing concerns and things like that, but they have inbound set pieces, what they call plays, where there is sort of a scripted flow of what they're hoping to get done. setting a screen so that the jump shooter can get out to the corner. A lot of that stuff, but it's the fast break, rebounding, kicking out, like all those things are in the player's hands. The game is more. That's why you have the point guard is the coach on the field. The quarterback is the coach on the field in football, but I'm just saying the coaches dominate the game. Like Andy Reid is the 12th man, because he's an incredible offensive genius. And a broken play in football is has less success than a sporadic, frenetic pace of a basketball game where the coach can't even call timeout to stop it, And that's where those runs come, that 15-0 runs and things like that. And so that's why I think a little bit of my freer spirit, it really, really enjoys basketball. And I'm fired up for that. And it does remind me of some good old days. And, for all those, we had, for some reason, the Knicks just had, they just wanted small forwards. Everybody was 6'6". They had, they just were, their draft issues, and it was really hard to like the owner of the team. And, I remember hearing stories about how he's got a blues band, and like at their Christmas party, that was the entertainment. You got a boss, he pays your paycheck, and then you got to pretend you like his 3-chord shuffle, But winning does heal wounds. And I do love that the three guys are from Villanova, Big East, and that has something to do with it. Like this is the fantasy. This is what, imagine this show, I can't get into the details of it, but if this show my buddy's on, he could get that part, and maybe down the line he's recurring. And, my dream is someday to work with people like I've known for years. And you can only imagine the shorthand that would be there, or the kismet, or the vibe. That's what they have in having been teammates in college. That's incredible. And just statistically, how good that team was that won the title at Villanova, that they had 3 out of 4, almost maybe I don't know, they all had NBA players on the squad, And also that Brunson is overlooked. He has been maligned. Hot takes have said he's not good enough. In free agency, people unloaded him. It's that idea that it's not the size of the man. It's the size of his heart. Everything kind of on paper is against him. They say he's not quick. They say he's undersized. He's then listed at 6'2". I doubt that. Doesn't really jump, but he's a ball player. I think he's a little bit more akin to the comparison, not in position, because he's definitely a point guard with a handle, but it's sort of like what they said about Larry Bird, but it's the will, it's the IQ. I'm talking about Brunson, of course. He gets to the whole point is getting to where you want to get in space, and I think it's a willful player, a player who knows where he needs to get to your spot, beat someone to the spot, insist on that spot, play bully ball, even though you're smaller stature, or in Larry Bird's case, he was tall. He had definitely the right stature, but he was slow of foot, they said. But he always got to his spot, and he always got his jumper off. And Brunson never gets swatted. He just fades away, and man, he's just so everybody's identifying with his ability to rise above, and that's what I'm into. And now this is turning into, waxing poetic about the Knicks, but and I'm just vibing on all these insanities. Like there are people who are saying F Dunkin' Donuts and shit like that. That shit cracks me up. And you're starting to see like what makes the tri-state area. I'm gonna throw Jersey into the mix. I joke around that we're the sixth borough, but like the East Coast sense of humor and shit talk is so refined, because they you get on a rant and you just MF the whole whatever comes into your dome piece to they're screaming F Boston. They're not even playing Boston. It's the best. And everybody gets swept up. You want some of this is like the whole point, you know? And so maybe I'll have a bacon, egg, and cheese for the fucking cause. And so and what a time, you know? And it'll be big in the city. And wow, it's been, I mean, I haven't known. All I know is the years the Knicks went to the finals, I had to suffer I'm one of the rare people who didn't enjoy Jordan's time because he killed us every time. And it was hard to root for the wrong. I mean, you know, I guess it might have been like if you were a George Foreman fan or something. I don't know. But Jordan was not my guy. He is, in retrospect, obviously was incredible, but it was just he killed the Knicks every year. So I was always contrarian. I mean, and the thing about Jordan, that he was so big that they were native New Yorkers rooting for the Bulls, you know. And now maybe there's some bandwagoning, but at least everybody's on the same effing page. And you know, that's the problem with the Spurs, right? They're a mid-market team, maybe mid to small, and you know they have a gloried past, and they hang banners, and they're great. But it's like. You know, it's not the big city. It's not the big city, and the Knicks fans are showing out in San Antonio, and that session has just turned into a trip down sports memorabilia lane, and that's okay. That's okay. That's what I wanted to talk about, or where this session, and that's why I call it a session, because it's like a jam session, a one-man band jam session, and it goes where it's gonna go, and it has to be what it's gonna be, and that's, you know, where I'm at. I guess where I'm at week to week professionally. You know, I'm trying to keep the demons at bay. Honestly, mostly, you know, inter-industry decline paranoias that are out of my control. I did have an audition. I did feel good about that. I did help a friend. These are the things on the checklist. And I am preparing for doing a new round of headshots, which is the bane of many an actor, or at least this actor. It's not my favorite thing to do, but they say the thing that is you're hesitant about, the things that you declare even in a wasted effort that you don't enjoy. There's something to look at there. And so I am going against my grain. I am painstakingly looking at photographers. I am painstakingly now narrowing that down. I am painstakingly thinking about what I want my quote unquote branding to say. And all these things I perish the thought of most of the time. I am now literally like leaning into, as they say. I am reluctant to share this out of a preponderance of caution about, I don't know, sharing taglines and things like that. But you have to, you know, hide in plain sight would probably be why this is a silly thing to be nervous or cautious about. What we all look for, especially in our, it's kind of, we don't want to be typecast if it's not a flattering stereotype that is attached to us as actors. But you want that lane, that lane of actor where I watch so much television and film that when a character is spoken about who hasn't appeared yet, like somebody's father, let's say, you can guess who's gonna. This is a crazy example, but you have Jennifer Lopez in this rom-com that I was forced to watch because of my girlfriend. You talk about her dad. Her dad started this company or whatever. CEO. She's a girl boss, right? You got 4 or 5 actors that you know are going to pop in on a screen. And when it's him, You know who it is. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. But in a very old series, there was a series called, I'm blanking on this. Brotherhood, I think it's called. Jason Isaacs and Jason Clarke, the two Jasons. Two Brits playing Boston guys. Or one Irish. I don't know. Part of why I want to rebrand and part of why I want to really stick my nose in is because I want American actors to be doing some heavy lifting in their native cities, in their native tongue, and all that stuff, and sort of to remind people that there are theater trained dialect abilities, that Americans have that too. But this TV show Brotherhood, I don't know where it originally aired. I think it's on Prime somewhere. Brotherhood was good acting. It was set in Providence. Let me say that. Let me get back to that. Providence, Rhode Island. That was the distinction. And it's about that city hall, one good brother, one bad brother. They've been doing that since Mean Street, since Pope of Greenwich Village, and then they throw it in Providence, which I'm sure Providence is sick of having their series and their depictions being referred to as Boston. Just like it's Providence is sort of like being from New Jersey when people say, "Oh, that's not New York," and then when people say Providence isn't Boston, but. So I think I have simpatico with Rhode Island guys as a Jersey guy. But they have years, they're estranged brothers. They have the matriarchal mom is an Irish woman. They have, all the characters. They're all playing playing the hits. And then they have this deadbeat dad that hasn't arrived. And I wish I had a witness, and I may have already spoke about this, but I'm like, Kevin McCarthy is going to be their dad. Before I look at IMDb, before I see the credits, I didn't see, I'm sure I didn't bother. I was hitting skip intro, so I didn't see the guest star, start of show guest star plates going by, names going by, but I'm just like, it's going to be Kevin McCarthy playing their deadbeat, alcoholic, abusive father. Sure enough, horse track. They got to talk to the guy. He's got to sign a deed or something. And here he is just doing his thing, chewing the scenery, being Kevin McCarthy. That's kind of the lane. Irish dad, working class, maybe a tortured soul, like an abuser who is not a one-note monster, but a monster nonetheless. I know the man is he started in the theater, but I just knew it was going to be him. And that isn't a bad thing. That is a great thing. And that is what and I don't know, his resume speaks for himself, and he's of the age before even color photography. So, and he's, like I said, he's in that, he's who you call. And you want to be a brand like that. And so that's where I'm at with the headshot stuff. He doesn't always even necessarily play Irish. He plays white ethnic. He's very good, and finally gets to play a little more warmth in Invincible, right? About Vince Papali. So he plays an Italian dad in Invincible, about the guy who basically tried out for the Eagles and made the team, and he's great in that. But how many people auditioned? I can't imagine it was a lot. That if you can get him, you can get him, and he said yes, and you want to be that guy. And one of the things that I have had to do in sort of like jumping ship with agencies is sort of re-pitch myself, reconfigure my notions of myself, and they're not the young strapping guy anymore. They're that dude, and so that's where I'm gotta go with the headshots. I gotta elevate the gravitas of the pictures I present, and I've come up with this mantra line that I think, and we'll see, and maybe that will be part of my process with the photographers that I choose, or the photographer. It's a notion that I want to, it's part of, you've heard other casting gurus and actor coaches, the coaches who do the business end of things, or the former casting director has a seminar or whatever. I'm using seminars. I know we don't have that anymore, but it's all gone online. But there is and the business of acting industrial complex, and a lot of it is like know your type, know your entry points, and what we're looking for is not occupations. That's what a improv actor wants. Give me an occupation, and they're like plumber, right? But an actor, you don't want to have your headshot be like just a series of occupations, or at least I don't. I'm not doing that anymore. But so when people see a headshot and they go, "Oh, he could play this, he could play that," okay, that's the surface. But the casters are just scrolling and they're looking for something, and something's got to be transmitted, and you want to show range, but in specifically where you could go. And so my thinking, and I could be ass backward wrong about this, but and some of this is empirical, because I have sat in on freebie loss leader Zooms that people have offered, and I've gone on these things, and I'm narrowing down, and it's not that hard to place me, but to get specific so that it's not generic, because you don't want to play henchman number one or whatever. But the line that literally kind of popped into my head, and I wrote it down on a Post-it because I wanted to remember it, and I wanted it, and it struck me, and it's and I have had a rewrite on it, but it's excuse me for giving a shit, and that informs characters, and it informs something inside the character. Okay? Now, it's not a mantra for life, right? Excuse me for giving a shit has a little edge to it. It may not be the most healthy for a person as a mantra, or as a log line, or as a saying to live by, right? Excuse me for giving a shit, because excuse me and then for giving a shit meaning you don't, or you don't like I do. There is a little edge to it. So I'm not saying it's well adjusted, but it is a vivid log line for a photo or for a premise of a way to pitch me. Because then that's where you then put the occupations on that. So I'm going to probably rock a tie and a suit for my detective photo, but a detective who's, excuse me for giving a shit, is the guy who cares, the guy who can't let it go, the guy who will never give up on finding the killer, the guy who takes his job serious and doesn't let people desecrate the corpse. The guy, that's where you want to put excuse me for giving a shit. That's the guy who's always not getting promoted, and the captain is playing politics, and this guy won't because he gives a shit, right? So then if you go to dad, because maybe I want to have a sweater and I want to look like a dad, to play a dad a la like a Dennis Farina to J-Lo kind of thing, in that movie that I'm blanking on, the Elmore Leonard one. And No Way Out? No, it's not No Way Out. Look Out? Whatever. The fucking point being, if you're a dad who, excuse me for giving a shit, that is, I'm going to protect, I'm going to provide, I'm going to be, your kid's going to hate it, but eventually they're going to understand that I give a shit. I'm not letting you go out with this bum. It could go dark. Excuse me for giving a shit. I'm going to be like overzealous. You know what I'm saying? What other parts? If you're playing like even if it's a mob guy, right? Excuse me for giving a shit. It's like, I believe in this omerta, or I'm not as cutthroat as I need to be because I give a shit maybe too much about right and wrong, and not just the money and the mob stuff. The other thing would be like a Wall Street guy. Excuse me for giving a shit. Like I'm going to be in conflict with the guy who wants to rob people blind. I want to, it's like the Steve Carell character in The Big Short, And so that's where I'm sort of siloing and trying to, what they call, signal, and knowing who I am. And then if it gets to the point where I have to write my own stuff to And also, excuse me for giving a shit is overzealous or way too intense, but it's edgy, and yet it's edgy light. And so even if it's a construction foreman, or the kind of things that you get one line co-star things, excuse me for giving a shit. And I can do other things, but I'm just saying that's going to be how I approach, because there are people who play mealy mouth. There are people who it would be excuse me for existing would be what like a mouseier kind of nebbish guy would play. So he might choose the idea of saying excuse me for existing. Again, not a great slug line for existing in the real world, but it's a good energy. It would help him be castable by saying excuse me for existing, because then you play the weirdo, the crazy person, or and then if you're like a Ted McGinley type, excuse me for being good looking, you know what I mean? And but excuse me for giving a shit is kind of what I'm going for. And that can be high status, and it can be white collar, blue collar, and it could be criminal. But I think that that's where it's gonna go. And if I were to do my version of career consulting and coach, I would say, yeah, because I've stolen this also again from Sports Reference. I forget there is a book I read. It's about I want to say Washington State. It's about a girls basketball coach in Washington State, and how he was I think an English major who got thrown basically the administration begged him to take the extracurricular, and he didn't know basketball at the time, and then he built them into like this powerhouse. But what he did, and it might have been a movie too, but I think it's a book, and he would come up with a theme for the season. And I think the only example I can remember from the book, but he would say, this is we're a gathering storm, which I think is one of the books in the series of books that Winston Churchill wrote about, what that emergence of and what was happening with World War II. But to flip it as a mantra for a season for a basketball team, that we're a gathering storm, and that was maybe because he had to find something that would get them motivated, that maybe he could tell that he had sophomores and juniors, and that it wasn't going to be that season. And then he had a different image for the season the next year, which was Unleash the Hounds, let's say. And so, and this kind of was like how an English teacher found his way into coaching a basketball team. And it was very interesting, and I am motivated by that stuff. And so that's how I'm going into this process of finding pictures. But it's not just that. It is realigning with a why, right? When they say you got to think about your why when you're persisting in something or starting something new, or you have to find the why. And excuse me for giving a shit is kind of how, it's always been. But that sometimes it's hurt me because it puts you at odds with middle management, because sometimes you find out real quick that not everybody's, and the pecking order is different than the actual competency and things like that. It's like you just see how you could use that as an entry point. You can identify characters in films over the years. You can identify characters who have that would, you could pull that sentence out of their subconscious as to how they're entering the thing. I'm just flashed. It's just random. I flashed to Crimson Tide, and it was Denzel and Gene Hackman, right? Neither of them are, excuse me for giving a fuck. I am exemplary in all things, and I am right. That would be their thing. But the George Zunza character, Cobb, the heavyset guy, he gives a shit. He gives a shit about things. And there's the scene where he turns on his liege. Him and Gene Hackman are attached. He's, And Denzel says, put the captain in his quarters and relieve him of duty. And the guy's like, and the cop says, Captain, he's right. And you're like, oh shit, the dude turned on his leash, They confine Gene Hackman, the captain, to his quarters. Then they come back to Denzel, and Denzel says, thank you for, standing up for me. And he goes, fuck you. You're wrong, but I have to follow procedure. That's a guy who's, excuse me for giving a shit. Like, you could see that. That's how you get vivid with things, in my estimation. And that's how I want to approach everything. Even 2 lines, 1 line. And again, if they say just throw it away, yeah, I get that. But you can still throw it away and say, you got to sign in. I threw that away. But if you're, excuse me for giving a shit, whoever is going to respond, you're signing in, right? You're going to pick up that clipboard, because you don't have a choice. Because I threw it away, you got to sign in. But I am a guy who gives a shit. It just makes things vivid, I hope, and I think, and it's sort of felt like a new approach. And so I am looking forward to finally saying out loud, I'm looking forward to the process of these new headshots, because it's a new branding. And then I won't get into the minutia of how I've approached it by, I'm looking at rosters of top 5 agencies and going down the line, scrolling and looking at, most of the pictures are on set BTS photos or red carpet photos, but the few well-known actors who have headshots, who shot that? And because I want the branding also to be working ass actor who gives a shit. Not that the actor gives a shit, but that you're playing the guy who's, excuse me for giving a shit. And again, last week I talked about when you hear compliments from other people, or you read in a script things that other characters say about your character, that's a hint. The most brutal way to exemplify that would be if somebody says, geez, it's almost like the guy's bent over at the waist, like his back's blown out. I don't know what's wrong with him. If you read that on page before your character enters, or in a scene where your character is off stage or screen, you'd say he's got bad posture. That's a clue. But there are also ways that people talk about someone's. So what I'm saying is, and I spoke about a few like compliments that were edifying and buoying for me over the years. They've been lean and mean, to be honest with you. And most of your motivation has to come from within. But I had a friend, a regular at a bar in New York, who he drank for free and always slapped a 20, and he never abused it. And he would always say to people, Carl's going to do it, man, because he's intense. So he called me intense. And even in my 20s as a bartender in New York, I was intense. And so all of this is sort of like, what is intensity? It's giving a shit, right? So excuse me for giving a shit is my type. It is my lane. And I'm trying to find a way to be like so specific that the phone rings for that from me. You need someone who gives a shit. You need intensity right here. And updating materials and bringing my material up to the level to full circle this, working with a working actor, helping him with his self-tape and knocking it out of the park and being done with 20 minutes to spare on the hour. There's only a few people who can do it. There's plenty who can do it, but those are the people in our field. And then there's a lot of people trying to that can't even play at that level. And so, excuse me for giving a shit. People help you with a reading. Sometimes they don't care about their end of the scene because they didn't even look at it. Sorry, I give a shit. I help my buddy out. And, we are probably out for the same thing sometimes. But anyway, the full circle moment is intensity and approaching things. And intensity, there's synonyms, right? Zeal, lust for life, sucking the marrow, right? Being hyphy. There's a lot of things that go into how you navigate it. And I guess with some open eyes, with some quiet in my life, I'm starting to hear and channel and use information from the past present. Excuse me for giving a shit. Get me Carl DeGregorio. Wow, let me see. Who's this guy? Oh shit, look at that fucking headshot. He looks good. And he's funny. Yeah, you wouldn't think it, but he is, because I have those notes too. But my entry point is, you know what I mean? So even if I'm a cop still in uniform, still in the bag, right? See, I've been doing research on cop stuff for so long. In the bag means you're still in the uniform, right? Even if you're that guy, if you're, excuse me for giving a shit, when the detectives show up and they say, what do we got here? And you have two lines, it doesn't translate. It's not going to overpower it. But if you give a shit, you can be like, the slugs are 38. We found the shell casings. Okay, that's all you get to say. But like the energy I'm putting in, excuse me for giving a shit. I'm a cop for the right reason. So when the detectives show up, I'm gonna make sure I got the intel. You know, and maybe I'm being looked over, or I want to be a detective, or if it's like a guy my age who's still in the bag and not promoted, that giving a shit probably got him in trouble, right? That's the whole point of Top Gun Maverick, right? The Tom Cruise movies goes away for 30 years. They do the remake or the Redux, best movie that year, 2022, I think. Got people back in the theaters. They keep saying, how the fuck are you still a colonel? Like, I think he's finally a colonel. He's like, you should be an admiral by now, or whatever. And it's because he gives a shit, and he's a maverick. I mean, it's. And I think when you're fuzzy and you're putting out mixed signals, then that's a problem. And my fear of typecasting, or my fear of being lumped in as a mobster, I think. Boss is a boss, right? You're a mob boss. You're the boss of the electrical plant. You're a CEO, you know. So I should not take it personally, my casting. Don't take your casting personally, especially if you fall into the guy, you know, because there's guys who play freakazoids, right? There's the guy, somebody's got to play Dahmer. I mean, that was a bad example because the Ryan Murphy treatment is sort of why it's controversial, is that he gets like the up and coming actors to play these despicable people, and then they make him human. That's debatable, but the cat who played Dahmer, you know, he's like kind of dreamy outside of playing Dahmer, and he's showing off his range. But there are in serial killer movies, there's somebody who's got to play the serial killer, and so if you know, this is where the art comes in. Is like, you know, if you're the guy who can play, I think, and again, I will find out. This is going to be like a sample size, but I think I just read as the guy who's trying to get to the bottom of the things, which means I don't. And the best thing about, excuse me for giving a shit, is it's not corny. I'm not a crusader. I'm not like the James Comey movie, right? The Comey Rules. Like the guy was such a Boy Scout, it was brutal. And he wore people out, right? That's a different thing. That's my way or the highway. And that's how you play a square guy. You don't play a square guy just with attributes. You're like, it's my way or the highway. That's a straight shooter, a Boy Scout, right? But excuse me for giving a shit, you can be somewhere below the boss in the pecking order and still have a little bit of a superiority complex because of your righteousness. And that's just something I can play, I think. So a boss is a boss. And from all I know, you know, there's a servant of two masters, or there's all the commedia dell'arte thing where the valet is actually running. He's got higher status than the king because the king's a buffoon. Blazing Saddles does that, where Mel Brooks plays the mayor or whatever, and Harvey Korman's really running it, and he's pushing the boss is an egomaniac, but he's a moron, you know. Anyway. I'm just fired up, and I'm fired up about this sort of silly notion of the thing that used to be my least favorite part of it all, which is the entry point, which is the calling card. And until AI just wipes us all out, this is still the way it's going to go. And I'm finally energized to do the right thing and think about it rather than try to get a pretty picture. And that would be a long ass explanation for how to approach headshots, but also how to approach your career, how to, you know, and then having the answers. If you do meet people in a I remember I met an agent. I told you this probably before, and it's always in hindsight, but thankfully writing and being a comic, you start to like catalog this stuff. And now I know the answers. But they ask you these on the spot questions. You should know the answer, right? An agent I met in New York said, if everything went according to plan, where would you be in your career? And I gave him a mealy-mouthed answer. The answer now would have been, I would have been Dirk Diggler. Not because I was right for Dirk Diggler, but that was an actor in my range of playing, and everybody wanted to play that role. It was the it role of the time, right? Dirk Diggler is the Mark Wahlberg character in Boogie Nights. That was the best film P.T. Anderson, in my estimation, had. It was, I think, a second film, maybe third. It was audacious. It was, the birth of a new auteur. Period piece. Had it was a Scorsese homage all over it. And that the lead of that was the it guy. And if the agent is asking you where would it have gone for you if you got every yes along the way, and I just was like, well, and I talked about regional theater and all that stuff, but the real answer is I would have been Dirk Diggler. Moving forward, when people ask me I would have been Harry Bosch, right? That's a role I relate to. That's the excuse me for giving a shit. Everyone counts or no one counts. That's what Harry Bosch says. So it's not just a banal detective, with the fucking rumpled suit. It's because he's not even wearing rumpled suits. They got him G'd out a little bit. He wears jeans. He's a maverick. He wears what is the bare minimum that passes for, dress for a day-to-day detective, but he doesn't rock the fucking Men's Warehouse stuff that every detective in every show does, and every headshot has a guy in the Men's Warehouse stuff. But anyway, now on to the song. I think I'm going long today. The song of the week was last week, Every Little Kiss, which was sort of a dad rock, Bruce Hornsby in the range, but fuck that. Every Little Kiss is a great song, and it's not his best, but it's the one that I have on my all-time list. And this week, it's a little embarrassing, but it coincided probably when I got the streamer and all that, but it's Irene Cara, one of my favorites. From the Bronx, I'm pretty sure, from Fame, and the song is Fame. Now that is, it's a jam. It's got a good guitar lick, and she just sings beautifully, and it's a vibe. It's definitely a kind of dated rock song. It's got a great guitar solo, but it's her being like the triple threat that she was. Rest in peace. One of my favorites. And if anything, if you rock out to the song Fame from the movie Fame, if it gets you to listen to more of it, because Out Here on My Own is really the bravura performance in that movie. Her ballad, Sometimes I Wonder Where I've Been, Who I Am, Do I Fit In? I mean, it's beautiful. And just a quick thing, again, I've said this before, all singing is acting, and sometimes acting can be singing, not really, but when these songs, the requisite is a great voice, great. What translates it past that is the acting. So you have Irene Cara as a great example. You have Jennifer Holliday as a great example. You have maybe Freddie Mercury as an example, but you definitely have Bonnie Raitt as an example. These songs that are also moments. And anyway, check out Bruce Hornsby, will be in the description, and Irene Cara's next on the all-time Carl D list. And excuse me for giving a shit. Peace. Go Knicks.